The author I chose for my author study is Jason Reynolds. He is also an author that I chose to read a book for African American study. Jason Reynolds was born in Washington, D.C. on December 6, 1983. He grew up just a little bit outside the Maryland border in Oxon Hill. It was a neighborhood where his mother could afford a house with a yard for him and his 3 siblings to play in, and sometimes they had extended family that would stay there. She was a special education teacher in one of the Maryland public schools. When Jason was 9 years old, he began to write poetry, and because he really liked the way that Queen Latifah rapped, and he took things that happened in his neighborhood and was able to put it into poetry and things that happened in his life. Some of the big influences were Biggie and Tupac, and he was able to write a poem about his grandmother's death because he was able to relate it to himself. He goes and talks to a middle school after he's begun writing these books, and he says, "This is not something that I'm proud of, but I'll tell you, I did not read a book until I was 17 years old." He said, in school, the teachers would hand out these books like Moby Dick and Lord of the Flies, and I would ask the teacher and think to myself, how am I supposed to relate to a book of someone chasing down a whale when I've never even seen a whale before? So they really didn't relate to him the things that were happening in his neighborhood. So he began working at a DC bookstore chain called Caribou Books when he was 17, and it was mainly focused on African American literature and books. And he said he began to read Richard Wright's novel Black Boy. That was the first book that he read from cover to cover when he was 17 years old, and then he began to just dive into all the African American literature that the bookstore had on the shelves, and that's when he really began to start reading about things that he could relate to, and then that's kind of where he took off from there, writing about things that were happening in his neighborhood. He loves the real and the honesty that his books bring to kids, and some kids can even say, hey, that's happening in my life, which he was not able to do when he was younger. He won a lot of awards, so I'm going to have to read them from a piece of paper. He is a New York Times best-selling author. He won a John Steptoe New Talent Award. He is a National Book Award for Young People's Literature. He won the Walter Dean Myers Award 2 times. He's a Coretta Scott King Award honor in 2016, 17, and 18. An NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literacy Work for Young Teens. Newbery Honor, a Prince Honor Award book. He's a finalist for an NAACP this year for the Imagine Award for Outstanding Literary Work for Young and Teens. He won the Edgar Award for the Best Young Adult Work. He's been on The Tonight Show with Trevor Noah, on The Tonight Show with Seth Meyers, and PBS, all talking about why he wrote the kinds of books that he has written. And here are some of his works. This is called All American Boys, which you could tell he won 2 awards for that. Ghost is a story in a 4-part series, and I happened to read this book. Patina is the next one in that. We have Sunny, and then there's Lou, which is the 4th book of that track series, talking about the track. He has When I Was the Greatest. This one's As Brave as You Are. He won 3 awards for this, and this is another book that I'm reading. A Long Way Down. The Boy in the Black Suit. He won an award for that as well. This is Miles Morales' Spider-Man. He was actually able to write for DC Marvel Comics. And this one is called For Everyone, and it doesn't come out until next year, but you can go and find it on Amazon. And I read the book Ghost, and it was about this guy called Castile, but he names himself Ghost. He learns, he grew up in a house where his father tried to shoot him and his mother, and he found a love for track and where he could channel his aggression. And come to find out later in the book, the track coach was able to relate to him so well because he grew up in the same place, same kind of neighborhood.